Hello again, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining Dragon Trail International and ForwardKeys for today's webinar on the question of what's next for Chinese travel. My name is Sanya Cook, and I'm Dragon Trail's Director of Marketing and Communications. We're really excited to be partnering with leading travel analyst ForwardKeys today to bring you the freshest data on Chinese flight bookings and consumer sentiment surrounding travel. First up on our agenda today, we'll be talking briefly about China's new international travel health certificate, as this was really the big news last week, and I'm sure it's a development that many of you are watching closely. Next, I'll turn over to Nandai from ForwardKeys to take us through the latest information on Chinese travel bookings for the coming months, as well as longer-term projections. Then in the last part of the webinar, we'll turn over to Dragon Trail's Mengfan Wang to give us a first look at the results of Dragon Trail's newest Chinese traveler consumer sentiment survey. At the end of the webinar, we will have time for a Q&A, and you can send in your questions at any point during the webinar by using the Q&A button on your Zoom control panel. Please do use the Q&A button instead of sending questions through the chat, as it makes it much easier for us to make sure that we can see the questions and answer them at the end of the webinar. We will be sending a PDF copy of today's slides to all attendees by email tomorrow, as well as a link to a recording of the webinar, so you'll have all of that information for reference, as well as if you want to share it with any colleagues who maybe weren't able to attend today's live session. So today we're very lucky to have with us two expert speakers from China. We've got Nandai, China market expert at ForwardKeys, as well as Mengfan Wang, who is research manager at Dragon Trail International. For those of you who don't know Dragon Trail International, we are a marketing solutions company that's headquartered in Beijing with offices in Shanghai and Xi'an, as well as London, where I'm based. While we do serve sectors outside of travel, including education and international trade, travel and Chinese outbound tourism is really one of the core areas of our work. And we're proud to work with leading travel brands all around the world to help them to connect to Chinese consumers, as well as the Chinese travel trade. So before we get into the main content of today's webinar, I just wanted to talk very briefly about China's new international travel health certificate. So this is a digital certificate that was launched just last week, and it's available through WeChat mini program. And what it does is stores results of PCR and antibody test results, as well as vaccination history. This is a very positive development in terms of getting the recovery of outbound travel going again. But that said, Chinese citizens are still advised not to travel internationally, and China's very strict quarantine requirements have not been lifted yet. There has been a lot of optimism within the global travel industry that this could mean the start of Chinese outbound travel again as early as June. But this really remains to be seen, and it will be influenced by a number of different factors. So for instance, China's vaccine rollout, the state of the pandemic around the world, and whether other countries choose to recognize the certificate and the vaccines that are currently being used in China. Beijing is hosting the Winter Olympics next year, and so this may give everything a little bit of a push. But for now, there really aren't any solid answers or dates yet about the relaxation of international travel restrictions. So this is something that we're all going to have to keep an eye on. But that said, there is certainly domestic travel already happening in China, and I'll turn over to Nandai from ForwardKeys to take a look at that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nandai from ForwardKeys. Thanks for inviting me here. I think this is a great platform to get together, to share, and to learn. First, let's take a look at domestic travel in China to see how it recovered in 2020 and how it will perform in 2021. Let me share my screen first. Yeah, can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, so, excuse me. Looking back to the evolution, the recovery began in late February last year and continued to pick up slowly throughout March and April until it received a stimulus from the Labor Day holiday. Domestic travel recovered 58% by mid-May. Then there was a setback around mid-June due to Beijing's second wave of COVID-19, but it has been quickly contained and the impact was temporary. In the summer, the recovery accelerated when interprovincial group tours resumed on the 14th of July. Also in July, China Eastern Airlines first launched unlimited flight pass. Many other airlines followed. This promotion successfully stimulated demand. As earlier as mid-September, we saw a full recovery to pre-pandemic level, and the travel peaked during the National Day Golden Week in October. The recovery continued until mid-October, then travel started to drop. It's quite normal, as you can also see from 2019's line here. November and December are usually the low seasons, but from late December this year, domestic travel has been hurt by a modest rebound in locally transmitted cases, and travel greatly declined more in mid-January when the authorities called on the public to stay put for the Chinese New Year. Then came the Chinese New Year. Domestic travel in the fortnight before Golden Week was 62% down when compared to the same period in 2019. During the week-long Chinese New Year holiday, it was 69% down. However, traffic rebounded quickly from the third day of the Golden Week. The arrivals at the beginning of Golden Week were 77% down, while travel at the end was 47% down. Then we see the increasing trend continued after the Golden Week, which is thanks to the released travel restrictions when the latest outbreak has been contained. On the 22nd of February, China cleared all high and medium risk areas, while earlier March is also the time for university students traveling back to school. Looking at the top destinations, Beijing received the most visitors, but attracted only 38% as many visitors as it did in 2019, due to strict rules. From 28th of January until 15th of March, all passengers travel to Beijing need to have a negative PCR test result in the preceding 7 days. Shanghai fared badly, recovering also 38%. The other two Tier 1 cities, Shenzhen and Guangzhou, occupied 4th and 6th position, recovering 55% and 46% respectively. Chengdu jumped to the second largest destination with a significant recovery of 63%. Chongqing achieved 61% of 2019 visitor numbers. These two major cities in southwest China are getting more and more popular for their natural sceneries and local food. Sanya has seen the strongest rebound, recovering 66%. Zhengzhou, the other star destination, attracting 65% of 2019 visitor numbers. Its popularity was boosted by the dance show in their Spring Festival online gala, viewed by hundreds of millions of people. The show was inspired by a group of Tang Dynasty portrait figurines displayed in the Henan Museum. According to Henan's Cultural and Tourism Department, internet searches for the Henan Museum surged over 500% year-on-year during the Chinese New Year. Now, looking into the future, at all the tickets that have been issued as of 8th of March, forward bookings for Chinese domestic travel during April and May are 49% behind the same period in 2019. However, if we look at some key travel periods, there is considerable domestic travel demand during the Labor Day holiday, with bookings ahead by 38%. On the 5th of March, during two sessions, when asked about whether people can travel during the Labor Day holiday, Dr. Zhang, the leader of Shanghai Medical Treatment Expert Group in the COVID-19 pandemic, believed that this period will be suitable for people to travel. It's worth mentioning that the Labor Day holiday has been extended to a 5-day holiday this year from 1st to 5th of May. The peak travel time concentrates on the first day and the last day of the holiday, while in 2019, it was a 4-day holiday. We saw people started to travel on Saturday before the holiday. So during the Labor Day holiday, where are people traveling? Analyzing for major destinations, we can see that Chengdu has continued growing in popularity, as forward bookings are double that of the same period in 2019. Sanya ranks the first position, with bookings ahead by 77%. Haikou is out of top 15, but bookings are already 157% ahead. Forward bookings to Harbin are much advanced as well. This northern destination suffered during Chinese New Year due to the rebound in COVID-19 cases. The pent-up demand is set to be released greatly during the Labor Day holiday. Surprisingly, we see that Zunyi jumps into the top 15 destination by booking volumes, with significant growth in advanced bookings. Zunyi is a famous national patriotic site in landlocked Guizhou province. Its popularity could be boosted by the strong promotion of rural tourism and red tourism as the Chinese Communist Party celebrates its 100th birthday this year. Looking at the seat capacity evolution in the Chinese domestic market, capacity recovered fully to the pre-pandemic level in August 2020. In Q4, 8% more seats were added into the domestic market. The start of 2021 has not been easy for Chinese airlines. Airlines cut capacity by 23% this February due to strict travel restrictions during Chinese New Year. Looking at the March schedule, airlines are adding 19% more seats compared to the pre-pandemic levels. By contrast, international capacity dropped to only around 10% of the pre-pandemic level last August and just stayed at 10% until now. The CAAC has applied 5-1 policy and circuit breaker measures concerning international flights. So if the number of cases on any flight reaches 5, the flight will be suspended for 2 weeks. If it reaches 10, the suspension will last for 4 weeks. As China has maintained strict border controls for now, when can we expect to see the recovery of Chinese outbound travel? According to our long-term forecast available in traveler statistics, showing that development of Chinese outbound tourism until 2013, Chinese outbound travel will recover 25% this year, reach 55% of the pre-pandemic level in 2022, and is not expected to be fully recovered until 2026. As Sienna also mentioned before, the good news is that China has launched the health certificate for outbound travelers and is also planning to explore the feasibility of mutual recognition of vaccine injection with different countries. Although challenges remain and we may not see borders fully reopen for some time to come, it's the first step to resume global travel. Hopefully, we will see some regional travel resumed gradually when the conditions allow. Currently, Macau is the only destination seeing a rebound in bookings for mainland Chinese travelers. We can see that forward bookings concentrate on the upcoming holidays, especially during the Labor Day holiday. Flight tickets issued for the Labor Day holiday are just 45% below the same period in 2019, while outbound travel from China in general is 96% behind. I think there are a few reasons for this. First, there is a bilateral agreement for quarantine-free travel. Macau lifted travel restrictions and reopened to mainland China on 23rd of February. Travelers are exempt from quarantine both when arriving in Macau and when traveling back home. Second, people feel safe to travel to Macau as no locally transmitted cases have been reported in Macau for more than 10 months. Finally, promotions and discounts have boosted travel demand. For example, Air Macau offered a buy one, get one free plane ticket deal for Chinese travelers until the 28th of June this year. If you travel in tour as a couple, stay in Macau for at least 3 days, you can just pay for one ticket and your companion can get a free ticket. We observed that the share of passengers who travel in pairs has increased by 11% when compared to the normal times. So travelers are changing booking habits in response to COVID-19. Looking at Chinese booking behavior, one thing we have observed in the Chinese domestic market is that fewer people are paying for higher or more premium flight tickets. We can see that post-COVID-19 outbreak, 91% of Chinese travelers took economy class, while only 9% traveled on premium classes. While before the COVID-19, 20% of travelers chose to fly premium. For one thing, since last July, Chinese airlines have launched many kinds of unlimited flight passes on economy class at a very low price. Such products gained popularity among the consumers still keen to fly, especially for leisure and VFR purpose. On the other hand, business travelers who used to take business class cabins might not fly as much as they did before the pandemic due to working from home and online meetings. The other key trend we have observed is that people tend to book more and more at last minute. The average lead time has dropped from 10 days to 7 days, with tickets issued within 4 days of departure increasing 10% compared to the pre-pandemic level. In the latest 7 months, 87% of Chinese flight tickets were issued 1 fortnight before, while 59% of flight tickets were made just within 4 days before the flight. People tend to book more last minute because of the uncertainty of the COVID-19, while the more flexible ticket cancellation policies and the cheaper airfares have made people more comfortable to book this way. We would say that with travelers getting used to this new late booking habit, shorter lead times might become a new normal after the pandemic has passed. So with shorter lead times and travel corridors that keep changing, we have learned the business that fared the best were the ones who were able to react quickly when there is an opportunity. Data is now more essential than ever to gain that competitive advantage, especially during the recovery phase. Actual air tickets and traveler statistics are two main datasets we use today. Actual air tickets combines both indirect bookings from travel agencies and direct bookings from airlines, allowing us to see real bookings for future travel. With traveler statistics, You were able to observe passenger volumes and nationality profiles at airports down to the terminal level by the hour. Recently, ForwardKeys has added new forecasting features showing short-term and long-term forecasts as far as 10 years ahead. If you would like to know more about these datasets, please don't hesitate to contact us at webinar@forwardkeys.com. Thanks very much for your time. I'm happy to answer your questions during Q&A session. For now, let me turn over to Sanya.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for that really interesting information. At this point, we would like to complement some of your findings and also look more into the future possibilities of the recovery of Chinese outbound tourism. And we'll do that by giving you the first ever look at Dragon Trail's newest Chinese traveler sentiment survey. Now, this is actually the third consumer sentiment survey that Dragon Trail Research has done since the start of the pandemic. We did the first one in March of last year and then a second survey in September. So at this point, we can start to see some changes in consumer sentiment, which is very interesting, and one of the things that Mengfan will walk us through in just a few minutes. You can find those sentiment survey reports as well as reports that we've done on customized travel and travel marketing, all on the Dragon Trail website or available by request if you get in touch with us. And then in addition, we also provide bespoke reports. So for instance, if you're looking for more information about a certain topic in travel, a travel sector or a destination, you can get in touch with us directly to get a quote for that. So at this point, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Dragon Trail's research manager, Mengfan Wang.
Hello. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see and hear you. Thank you.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Mengfan, and I will be sharing some of our findings from the third sentiment survey that we are doing. For this one, we fielded the survey the week after Chinese New Year out to over 1,000 respondents. And we're really excited to see some results for domestic and outbound travel. So let's start from the domestic travel trends. So in January, there were some regional outbreaks in mainland China. And because of that, the central government actually put out some travel restrictions for the holiday. And as a result, 69% of the respondents said that their travel plan was affected by the regional outbreak. 28% were essentially unable to keep their travel plan due to the outbreak. And that is possibly due to then if they travel, then they will have to undergo extensive quarantine, COVID testing, and other pandemic control measures that would make their 7-day holiday impossible. And then we have 41% who decided not to keep their original travel plan. And that's likely due to the fact that when the regulations first came out, they were quite vague and differ by different provinces and cities. And so people were very unsure if they would have to go into quarantine if they travel. And so what happened is that majority of Chinese consumers either did not travel or they decide to travel within their provinces where they won't be affected by travel restrictions. For domestic travel, Southwest China seems to be the most popular region, and that is followed by Northwest China. And this is the area where we have Yunnan, Sichuan, Tibet, and Xinjiang. These provinces are known for having huge area of land, very good scenery, very distinctive food and culture. And so a lot of people are going to these areas even before the pandemic. And with the COVID happening, actually accelerated the trend. Note that Northeast China and North China are ranked sort of that at the last of the list. And Beijing, being a very popular destination in the north, did not drive up that demand for the region. And this is likely also due to the regional outbreak prior to Chinese New Year. Okay, and then we looked into the overall sentiment of the Chinese travelers and consumers. And this is something we look at for all three of our sentiment surveys. Which is with the regional pandemic slowly under control after Chinese New Year, we think that Chinese travelers will feel more comfortable with traveling again. And that's what we have seen here. Essentially, we have three main categories of sentiments. There are the people who are not sure about traveling and they would wait until it's safe. And then we see increasing amount of people saying that they will travel, but they would do so very cautiously. And lastly, we have people who are eager to go and they would travel as soon as it's possible to. So compared to the previous sentiment surveys, where over half of the sentiment was about waiting until it's safe to travel, we are seeing people feeling more and more optimistic, and traveling cautiously has increased significantly from the previous sentiment surveys. And what goes under each category is also interesting. For those who are playing it safe and wanting to wait until it's safe, they will prioritize health over traveling. They would avoid adding trouble for the society, essentially being the burden for healthcare and frontline workers. And that's something we see a lot in the sentiment. For people who are waiting until it's safe, they would also mention that quarantine is a barrier for outbound travel. Then we have people who would travel but would do so cautiously, and they have some serious concerns. So these people, they would definitely avoid medium or high risk areas. They would look into the specific pandemic prevention policies and how effective they are. They will look at the pandemic control. They would follow policies and take precautions. And I want to note that these people will also look at how friendly Chinese travelers are being treated when traveling. And this is something we will be seeing again in our survey. And lastly, we have people who are eager to travel. And these people, they see travel as a way of life. They learned from the pandemic that travel is not to be taken granted. And they would also be traveling outbound and see more nature when the time is right. So moving along, we look at the travel timelines. And we're seeing here that domestic travel will see a very strong recovery, with 45% of respondents considering to travel in the next 3 months. Compared to domestic, outbound travel in general still have quite a bit of uncertainty as of the time of this survey. Business travel compared to leisure holds more uncertainty for both domestic and outbound. Okay, and we look into what activities would would people like to do in the next outbound trip. And it's interesting that this list is quite similar to pre-pandemic levels. Local food is still on top of the list. And we're also seeing that visiting landmarks, museums, or architecture are also on the list. And that's something different from what we originally thought, because landmarks, they were used to be known for being crowded and being having a long line. And so them being still on top of the list, it's saying that although nature and unique attractions are very popular coming out of the pandemic, people would still like to visit the landmarks. Okay, so safety is a big evaluation criteria for specific destinations. And we look into perception of safety by a list of specific destinations. And I want to note that the perception of safety here is not just pandemic related or vaccine rollouts, it's also a general perception. So it could be affected by external reasons like media coverage, social order, the healthcare system, or even by internal reasons like how eager people are to visit specific destinations. And so we asked people to rate the destinations from a scale from very unsafe to very safe. And we found that over 70% of respondents rated Singapore and Japan as safe to travel. On the other spectrum, we have Chile and Peru, both received over or close to half respondents selecting unsure. And these destinations are not mainstream compared to the others, so it's natural that people might not know so much about them. We also have US and Canada, which received over half of unsafe ratings. Note that Australia here also has 48%, so close to half, saying that it's unsafe to travel. I want to stress that the perception of safety, again, it's not just pandemic related. It could also have other reasons like media coverage, the social order, etc. And lastly, we have these other destinations in the middle that seems to have mixed ratings of safe and unsafe. And in the full report, we will look into this in more details. Essentially, we will try to look into the differences by, say, age or gender. Okay, and we ask people to rank their preferences to visit for specific regions. And what we found here is that the top three, essentially the list of the rankings has not changed much from 2019 levels. The top three are still Asia, Europe, and North America. And North America, having a fairly low perception of safety, is still ranked quite high on the preference list. So this is telling us that people are still interested to go, although they would have some specific concerns of their safety. So with the news about vaccine rollout, with regional outbreaks coming out, we want to learn what makes people want to travel. And so that will help us to craft the right message to send them when the time is right. Earlier, we saw in the overall sentiment that friendliness to Chinese travelers is one of the concerns. And here, the point is again stressed. It's actually a priority for many Chinese consumers, even more so than pandemic-related reasons like zero confirmed cases, quarantine, or vaccination. So as we anticipate when and how outbound travel will recover, this should be an area to focus on when we talk to Chinese travelers. In addition to these factors that will increase people's willingness to travel, we want to know what are some of the other ones. And there are many out there. There are external factors that include local preventative measures, government's advice or distance of the destination. There are also internal factors like one's optimism levels or personal experience with the virus. So in this survey, we started out with a predetermined list of 17 drivers that might affect travel intentions. From these 17 drivers, we reached 6 clusters of triggers, ranging from risk perception to self-image. Then we have the others category where there are 3 drivers that did not group with the others. And we will look into them individually in the report. To give you an idea of how these triggers work, here are the 2 triggers of travel intention that have very strong impact on travel intention. And for here, official risk level is an individual trigger. Risk perception is one of the clusters that we found, and that contains 3 specific drivers. And what this means is that if raising travel intention is your goal in the next few months or quarters, then you should definitely address the official risk levels to Chinese travelers. Any change of risk levels, any areas or regions that have lower risk levels should be delivered or communicated to Chinese travelers. You should also mention local preventative measures, what worked and what are the results, especially the positive outcomes. You should also mention the personal finances. What would be the cost of traveling outbound coming out of the pandemic, considering any travel insurance, cancellations, or unforeseen outbreaks when travel is possible again. And lastly, people don't want to be burdened for the society, essentially making the pandemic worse by traveling too soon. So this is something we also need to think about when we want people to travel to the destination. How to make people comfortable and worry-free when travel is possible again. These will be the vital triggers for travel intention. And in the full report, we will dig more into this. So lastly, we look at how these clusters of triggers have an influence on perception of safety for specific destinations. We see that for majority of destinations, external messages has the strongest influence on perception of safety. And to remind you, external messages here, it's Chinese government's travel advice or travel agent advising that it's safe to travel again. And this means working with travel trade is vital to help shape the perception of safety. When traveling outbound, Chinese consumers will definitely look into government's travel advice as well as travel agents' confidence levels. And so giving regular updates about the pandemic measures, risk levels, friendliness to Chinese travelers, where would be the place to go when travel is resumed will be very vital. And this is something we can also start working on now as the vaccine is rolling out. So we can be better prepared for when travel is possible again. I would also mention that personal experience here also has a stronger impact for European destinations and South American destinations. Personal experience here has two drivers. One is my personal experience with the virus, and the second is my optimism levels. And so what this means is that destinations need to give people essentially a reason to feel optimistic and safe before they're willing to travel or to raise their willingness to travel. And these messages will be essentially more important for European and South American destinations compared to the others. And for the specifics, we will be digging more into the report, so stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Fang-Fan. I know that you're still working on a lot of additional data analysis, so our full report will have even more information than this. As Fang-Fan mentioned, we'll also be looking at factors such as age and gender, city tier, and how those might play into people's sentiment about traveling. So that full report will be available by the end of this month. So please stay tuned to the Dragon Trail website or follow us on social media or subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you find out exactly when that is out and available to read. So at this point, we can move on to the Q&A session. And I know there are quite a lot of questions already.